to South Suburban Missionary Baptist Church. We are located in Harvey, Illinois, and our pastor is Reverend Dr. Annette Jones. I am Reverend Melanie Jones, and I am your midweek moment host for the month of August. As you know, August is the 8th month of the year, which means new beginning. It is also a month where many of our students return back to school. Last year, we talked about preparing the process for attending undergraduate. So this year, we decided to focus our attention on preparing to attend graduate and professional schools. We've invited several guests, folks who have completed law school, folks in medical school, folks who have completed their PhD. And today, I'm excited to bring to this platform Keisha Nelson, who has a master's degree in education, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her journey in education. Welcome, Keisha.
Hello, thank you so much, Reverend Melanie. I'm so excited to be here and to hang out with you all and talk a little bit about my journey. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to have you. Just so y'all know, me and Keisha are really, really, really good friends, great friends, college best friends from Howard University, you know. So we are alums from there, and we met there in college. And Keisha went on to do many amazing things. So she's going to tell us about that journey. To kick us off, my first question tonight is, what inspired you to pursue a graduate degree in education?
Well, I'm so happy I'm talking to you today. And like I said, thank you for having me on. I know you know me, but just to let all of the South Suburban family, you guys, I'm very candid, I'm very open, and I'm going to be completely honest with you all. After majoring in education and undergrad, I did not feel ready. that was a really big thing for me, and a big contributor as to why I decided to go on to grad school. I do love to learn naturally, but even beyond that, I didn't feel like fully prepared to enter the classroom. I also didn't feel like I had enough experience in the specific area of education that I wanted to go into, which my degree is in reading, writing, and literacy. And so while my undergraduate, like Mel mentioned, Howard University, of course, our university prepared me very generally to enter into an elementary classroom or general education situations. I really wanted to hone in on literacy and reading and literacy education and all of that. And so we didn't quite get that deep into that specific area. So that was one major reason why I decided to go to graduate school.
I love that. I think that it talks about you help us to understand that the undergraduate degree helps you in getting a kind of beginning, general, kind of broad sense of your profession. And you knew that after completing that you wanted more advanced studies. So this is exactly what a graduate degree does. Is it helps to narrow your focus. Now you should be a little bit more particular about your interests and able to hone in, as you said, onto the subject that really interests you. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So for folks who are considering graduate school, particularly in education, what are some of the prerequisites? And tell us a little bit about how you prepared.
Yeah, so I do think that something that's really important outside of some of the obvious academic prerequisites, which of course, getting an undergraduate degree, having a bachelor's degree, and for some areas and some schools, they're going to require you to take standardized tests. I would challenge folks to really do some soul searching before you go to graduate school, because as a prerequisite, ask yourself what is important to you, what is an area of study, because um, as you enter further and further into the world of academia, you should be led by your passion in areas of study that you really want to learn, as they say in the South, from the rooter to the tutor. You want to really be able to get an in-depth understanding. You want to learn about what professors are actively studying this work or what you can contribute to the field, even at the master's level. And so I would say a big prerequisite that people may not think about is doing some soul searching and figuring out beyond sort of the general understanding of what you have in your area, what is that specific kind of string within your field that really interests you. So doing some soul searching, in my opinion, is really, really important. For me, some of the ways that I prepared were actually outside of the classroom. I felt really confident about the quality of education that I was receiving. So I knew that I had the academic sort of foundation from my undergraduate preparation. And in addition to that, I also engaged in a lot of extracurricular activities that helped to prepare me with building my confidence, with things like networking. Graduate school can be a little bit more hands off in terms of, providing opportunities. They're not necessarily knocking on your doors. Sometimes you have to look for them. And so I really appreciated things like internships and organizations in which I held leadership positions to really help sort of groom me into that person who wanted to take the extra step in creating opportunities for myself. Because in graduate school, there are lots of opportunities and ways where you can succeed in a really, really special way. But I do think a prerequisite to that is having these other sort of, affiliations or things that you're participating in to help build your confidence and self-esteem so that you know how to network and present yourself professionally so that you're ready for what graduate school has to hold.
I think that's such great advice. I think what you're speaking to is graduate school helps you to become a scholar. It also helps you to become a professional. And in both of those roles, there is a kind of shift from, just taking courses that add
Mhm.
up to a very intentional focus. And so, yes, having that preparation by being confident in who you are,
Yeah,
graduate school will test that
yeah,
confidence for
100%.
sure. Yes, to say, well, maybe I wasn't really interested in this, or maybe I'm not really that smart, or maybe I shouldn't be focusing on this.
Mhm.
But having all of those um, preparation in terms of that kind of internal, really, and then external to the
Absolutely.
requirements or might really be what helps you to become successful. I love that. I absolutely
Absolutely.
love that. So, from undergrad to graduate school, there's always a choice of choosing the next graduate school. I know you didn't go to Howard after for graduate school, so you chose another school. Talk to us about how did you choose a good graduate school?
So, I think this answer would vary for everyone because to me, it comes down to your values. And so, some of that answer can go back to when you chose your undergraduate. Maybe you chose it for financial reasons. Maybe you chose it for convenience. Maybe your family, your parents, the decision makers in your life helped you make that decision. For graduate school, for me, what was number one was uh, like looking at the program. And so what helped me decide was, first finding a school that had the program that sounded like it aligned with my values and what I wanted to study most. And so I think, like, as we think about the world of academia, there are schools, that really, and graduate schools, I think, take that shape a little bit more than undergraduate schools. They tend to be a little bit more objective, but graduate schools have very clear stances. And so when I was looking for a school that specifically had Black and Brown students at the forefront of their value system, and who they were trying to prepare, what types of educators they were preparing to enter into an urban setting in a predominantly Black and Brown classroom. And I found that the school that I went to, that I chose, the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, um, that it was, of course, being in an urban environment, but partnering with schools in West Philly, which are schools that I, grew up knowing about and grew up having friends who went to those schools, but we're really trying to make an impact. We had partnership schools between the Graduate School of Education and those schools to really be able to pour resources into some of these disadvantaged schools. That was really important to me. Of course, I saw other schools, some that had amazing programs, but might have been in spaces where they were gearing their students to enter into a different type of setting, or from a different school of thought, from a different approach. And as with any field, the field of education has many approaches to learning. And so, specifically for my program with reading, writing, and literacy, one of the things that I loved about the program was this idea that it was inquiry based. And so for me, that means that it wasn't just about, having sort of these test scores, traditional tests where we were doing running records, which is a very sort of old fashioned way of tracking a student's reading. We weren't just looking at phonics education and things like that, but we were looking at what is a student's sort of whole language understanding of this passage or whatever it is that we're learning about when it comes to reading. And so, to an effort not to get too deep into my specific field of study, but those kinds of things were things that really excited me. And so I definitely would encourage folks who are looking for graduate schools to look at the programs, look at the classes, and see what is exciting you. Is there anything that's really resonating with you? Is anything, what's bringing the nerd out in you? You know what I mean? In the most positive sense of the word. What is bringing out sort of that curiosity in you, the debate even in you, and saying like, hey, I take issue with this idea. Maybe I do want to come here and kind of, study this a little bit more and tease this idea out, and, think about ways that I can form my own sort of theories and perspectives and my stance within that field. Those are some things that I think you should keep in mind when selecting a graduate school.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful in terms of undergrad, choosing the undergrad is like fit and size
Yeah.
and location and
Hmm.
cost and
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Hmm.
But with graduate school, there is chance to be a lot more selective in
Yeah.
the programs. And that is, as you name, back to your passion, back to your interests, back to addressing, wait a minute, are these courses or is some of the faculty there? Is the program geared to things that excite me? I love that sense of inspiration and energy that comes from
Exactly.
a place that will challenge you.
Yeah.
To that point about costs, what are some of the typical costs associated with an advanced degree in education?
Well, of course, you have the traditional cost, same things as other graduate programs. Of course, you have tuition and books and of course housing and those kinds of things that you would recognize from undergrad. I would also consider some of the costs that are what like how you are paying for your field work. And so for us, many times in education, you're doing some type of student teaching or field work, field assignments. And when you're in graduate school, it's very similar to being the actual professional when conducting field work, in that you're the teacher. You're going to need materials. You're going to need to think of creative ways to engage your students. You're going to need to think of transportation, how you're going to get there. You're going to need to think of, the exact same cost that actual teachers need to incur when conducting your research. And I think that that's something that's really important because, you don't want to just think of pursuing this degree as sort of this black and white, whatever bill I get from the university, but also some of, the cost that's going to take for you to actually complete that degree. And so that also may, require extra writing courses. For me, my specific area, like I said, is reading, writing, and literacy. And so on campus, we had writing labs, we had tutors available, we had people to, edit your papers. And some of those resources do come from the university and they're free. Others are things that you may want to finance. And so you want to kind of keep that in mind, that you're going to be writing a lot. And no matter how great of a writer you are, and I'm talking to a great writer, I am a great writer, we all need editors. And so you want to make sure that your work is pristine, and you even just want to always have a second pair of eyes to look over your work, just because you're so connected to it. And so sometimes that does incur a cost. And so you want to kind of keep in mind that completing your work may require, for you to invest in an editor or someone else to kind of look over your work, and that may cost money. So just thinking about those other things on the side are important.
Yes, yes, and yes. That is a huge addition to programs that a lot of particularly Black and Brown students don't take advantage of until very late in the process. Or there's been a challenge where a difficulty completing a course or completing a thesis or dissertation or some sort. And then, finally, we're pursuing an editor or some sort. I'm absolutely in agreement that thinking about building that into your program early on, it's okay, right, to work with folks in order to produce the best quality work. And certainly, as you say, that's, germane to the work of education, student teaching and having the needs to fill classrooms. I see those, like, this is the time now, first day of school, and everybody's taking like their first day of school, obligatory picks and stuff like that. But I know those teachers pay all kinds of additional costs to make those, classrooms cute and fun and inviting and welcoming, especially at the start of the new year, that cost. So those are ways about thinking about factoring in that into to your costs as well.
Absolutely. And even just two other thoughts with that. I just feel like led to just say that it's okay to need like an editor. It's not a bruise to your ego. It's not, look at it as like as if you were hiring someone to come clean your home, or when we go out to hotels, it's a complimentary service that we choose to have, but sometimes we want to invest in that service as well. I'm going to the spa. Yes, I know how to turn on the hot water really, really hot to get my back, but I'm going to go to the spa to get a little extra self-care and all of that. Have some self-care in your work as well. It's like white glove service. We all deserve to have a team to look over our work, and investing in that is not a bad thing. The second thing I wanted to add also, for those of us who are returning to the classroom after having been away for, a couple of years, we may need to take a class, a buffer class, a writing class, a math class, just depending on what field of study that you're going into, just to kind of sharpen, some of those skills that we learned in undergrad a few years ago. And that is also something that you might have to invest in, whether that looks like a summer course at a community college or a junior college, or if it looks like, them building in. Sometimes we get accepted into graduate school, and then they say under the condition of taking, a few classes to sort of really get us to that place where we need to be before we enter the classroom. That's a possibility, and that could be a cost that we might need to incur too. So just sort of keep that in mind. We may have to take some extra classes before we step into that classroom.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That is ensuring that we do what we can to make sure we're prepared, whether we're needing an editor or, and honestly, everybody needs an editor. That's
Yes.
just it. It's
Oh
not
yes.
like whether we need it. It's like
Oh
everybody.
yes.
So start with that intention that we need someone to review our work in order to make sure it's the best. Yes, yes, yes. And then, yes, look towards those, tap back into some of those classes. And even if they're some of these community colleges that have, the like adult learner classes for you to tap back into some things to sharpen some skills before you go fully into the program, it'll rewind back
Yeah.
some of the things and ways of thinking that you may have put towards your profession or towards a career that need to be retuned for what you plan for next.
Absolutely.
What's the biggest misconception about graduate school?
Um, I think, I don't know, this may be controversial, but I think I have a couple of different ideas, and I'm trying to decide which angle I want to take, because I'll say that I think for me the biggest misconception was that I needed to go to graduate school right away. Um, and I did say, in the beginning that I didn't feel like I was ready. But Howard could have very easily pushed me out of the nest and I would have learned to fly, right? And that's similar to all of us. Like sometimes we need to get pushed out there, learn to fly. And one of the reasons why I say that is because for me, in my experience as an educator, one of the biggest advantages that some of my colleagues who were already working in the field had was a point of view.
Mhm.
They came with a classroom experience. They came with a soapbox. They came with sort of having this sort of worldly experience that I didn't have because I literally went to graduate school straight out of undergrad, and so I was coming from a very sort of like practical point of view. I wanted to learn how to teach kids how to read. And then once I fell in love and understood this inquiry based model that really took it to the next level,
Mhm.
um, I kind of felt like I was really relying on my student teaching experiences that I was doing in the middle of my graduate school studies. I was trying to create my own stance while I was learning. So I was building the plane and flying the plane at the same time, like that kind of
Mhm.
thing. And so
Mhm.
for me, I think one of the biggest misconceptions for my field specifically, I know for other fields, that's a different situation, but for me, one of the biggest misconceptions was that I needed to go straight to graduate school right then and there. When the reality is that plenty of people graduate, with an undergrad degree in teaching and they go right into the classroom and they excel and they're perfectly fine. And then 3 to 5 years later, they go on to grad school and they excel and they have a point of view. But I think for me, that was something about my experience that was obvious. I noticed it. I noticed that, experienced teachers were coming and it felt like they were getting their money's worth in a sense that was different than me, who was still, young and kind of learning about my own practice and my own experience and my own voice in the classroom.
Mhm.
So I think that that's something to kind of consider for those of you who are education majors, who are considering graduate school. Don't feel like you got to do it right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, that senior year of college, everyone's asking, what are you going to do next? And
Yep.
so you rush to make sure that you have something in place. And so
Mhm.
graduate school is a great option,
Yep.
especially the time in which we came out, which was a
Mhm.
tumultuous time economically.
Yes.
But this sense of if you can't, get a job immediately in the way in your
Yes.
field, then graduate school is the next best option, and absolutely is. But I understand what you're saying in terms of having the breadth of experience. And
Mm,
then that should encourage some of our second career folks who are doing the work
yeah.
and feeling a call to return back to further study. I mean,
Mhm,
yes, it's never too late.
no,
Return, make the leap, take the challenge, go after it, and use the best of your experience in your
absolutely.
profession to push towards, the study. So yes, I love that. I love that as well. Well, I know that you've had several jobs that have been outside of what is the classroom, particularly.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in how does your graduate degree inform your career?
So, I won't take the long journey of how I got to where I am, um, because that's for another session that you all choose to host. Um, but I will say, right now, I actually work in TV. I am the education and outreach manager at Howard University Television. And so, yeah, I love it. But and I do feel that my degrees have very well prepared me because even though I'm not in the classroom, all of the work that I do is with the mind of educating. Howard University Television is a public broadcasting station. And so, as you know, some of your favorite PBS shows, kids shows that you might have grown up on, all have sort of an educational lens. And so I take that educational lens and I work that in the community, with schools, with families, with youth serving organizations. And so I use my experience in the classroom and my experience as an educator to ensure that what folks see on our station is truly resonating with them with an academic focus. And so I love that I'm able to kind of pull from my toolbox and use my own skills, my own resources to support teachers, to support parents, to support students. And many of our community members appreciate that I have a background in education because I can speak that language to make people feel comfortable with, what they're seeing and how, shows like Arthur can, support social emotional learning with students and that kind of thing. But also just in terms of like the logistics side of my job, I write tons of grants. And so having a degree in reading, writing, literacy is definitely helpful with that, writing grants on a regular basis and making sure that my work that I still have edited, but making sure that that work is um, you know, reflective of the programming that we aim to have, and making sure that we can get finances to substantiate our work, which is really, really important as a nonprofit. So yeah, so I think my degrees definitely inform my work a lot, for sure.
Yeah. I think that's so exciting because many times when we see these degrees, we see the traditional pathways
Hmm,
like
hmm.
this, and this. If you
Yeah,
don't do one of those or you try one of
exactly.
those out and it doesn't work the way that you thought,
Exactly.
knowing that a graduate degree gives you skill sets.
Yes,
It gives you critical thinking, which can inform a number of different kinds
absolutely.
of positions that could be in the classroom, that could be in
Mhm,
schools, that
mhm,
could be corporate, that could
mhm,
be
mhm.
at a TV station, that could be
Exactly.
right in a number of places. So I love that you were able to think about your career broader
Yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of how to pitch its influence.
And I
Um,
think it's necessary. I'm sorry, but
no,
I
no,
was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, I think it's necessary for all of us to do that, because we all have, tons of gifts. We have more than one, and in times like these, when, you're in the middle of pandemics and, technology. And it's very, very important to understand ourselves as holistic individuals who can contribute to multiple fields, and being able to understand how our talents and gifts manifest in several different areas, and that we
Mhm.
can contribute to the world in many different ways. Um,
Yes.
so that's very important for all of us to do, and we have to make that money that we invested in graduate school worth it, every single drop of it. So that's really, really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The last question is just what are the benefits of a degree in education? We spoke to them, but let's just name some of those benefits.
Yeah. So okay, you know, I know we're talking about graduate school, but I will say parenthetically, one of the professors, Dr. LaPointe, that many Howard alum will know, one thing that she said to us about our degree when we had her was, this degree that you're going to have in education is going to, you can do all of these different kinds of things. And she listed all these things out. And so I think, kind of extending out from what the last question that we kind of discussed is your options and opportunities.
Mm, yeah.
um, Beyond just thinking about the classroom or even the traditional school setting. I think a degree in education is beneficial because of the skill set that it builds. Of course, being able to speak in front of a crowd, so public speaking, you're getting that all day, every day. Being prepared, being able to develop sort of these very practical lessons is something that translates in a lot of different areas for me, particularly with project management. I liken it to, developing a curriculum. When you get this curriculum and you need to break it down into many lessons that produce many assignments. It also is very similar to a project manager who has this end goal that needs to be broken down into many lessons or many tasks and many assignments that are, assigned to the team members in that group. I've really, really seen I've benefited personally from being able to say, like, as an educator, I've had this experience. I see how it translates in this space.
Yeah.
Um, and creativity. Teachers are called to be so creative, think of so many different angles. And guess what, y'all? That's helped me in the area of branding. I'm so serious. Just being able to think of different angles for how I'm going to teach a lesson about something that may seem boring, and keep that same thread and theme extending to, 8 to 6 to 12 weeks and all, thinking of this different angle with staying true to a message, and
Mhm.
making sure that my students are able to grasp that message is very similar to how an audience grasps the message of a company or of an organization, understanding that brand. Of course, the creativity of being able to look at graphics and all of those kinds of things. And so there are so many different ways that I've personally benefited from having an educator mind, even. But I love it, and I always encourage people to consider it. Finally, of course, just for the benefit of being able to give back and contribute to the community. I do really, really feel strongly about that person who's watching, that you feel you've been called to be an educator. Go ahead and do it. It's so important that we feel, going back to that confidence thing of, like, if we need to try something new.
Yeah.
If you feel your heart is drawn to young people or adult education, go on ahead and pursue that degree, because we need you, A, and B, your students need you. They're waiting for you, in fact. And the job of an educator is so important. And if we extend that job and responsibility outside of just the classroom, I think a lot more people would actually probably go into education, knowing just how vital and important and how vast the field is. So, yeah, I mean, super, super, super beneficial.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so much. So I hope folks have really tuned into each layer because
Yeah.
there's so much depth there in terms of the skills and the ways in which they've helped you to approach. And one of the things, particularly on the creativity for the branding and the marketing piece,
Hmm.
every job needs to be looked at,
Literally.
every profession needs to be looked at as an entrepreneur,
Absolutely.
meaning no one in the professional world is going to always push you. You have to be able to push yourself and to see yourself as marketable,
Yep.
able to sell yourself,
Hmm.
right, to the next person in order to move, or to the next company in order to move where you want to professionally. And that is helpful for everyone to keep in mind
Yes.
and to have the skills in order to do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, even when we're in church, we tell the preacher to what? We tell him to preach. But then if she's breaking it down, we tell her to teach, because she's educating us. She's a person, he's a person, they are people to, be able to take that information that's in the Bible that can be dense, that can be difficult to understand, that can be interpreted in many different languages, and to interpret it
Yeah.
for all of us to be able to break it down, to digest it. And that's the role and job of a teacher, to take this huge amount of information and digest it for all of us so that we can all be able to understand it. And so I think that's important piece too. The educators are all around us, and so getting that formal training is super beneficial. It's everywhere. You're an educator, and many of us are. Even on your job, you receive what? On the job training, you receive
Mhm.
professional development. Most of these people are former teachers, but we also have had times we've had bad teachers, people who don't know how to teach us how to input something in accounting, or how to whatever your profession is, how to do whatever it is that you do so well. But that it's everywhere, it's all around us. So yeah, we can't get away from it.
Absolutely. I think the last point you made is about giving back and seeing this as a service towards the communities that we love so much. And I think that's exactly what this midweek moment session is for us to engage with folks who have been through this process and to tell you, listen, there is space and room for all of us. Here's
Yes.
some tips, here are some lessons to get you from this place to the next.
Yes.
So thank you, Keisha, for
Yay.
this has been amazing. Your knowledge is invaluable. We are whole supporters of the work that you're doing. And I know you'll be back because this is
Oh,
more
of
stuff
course.
that we have to talk about in terms of
Yeah.
education. But thank you so much for joining us this week. To everyone online, South Suburban, followers, friends, covenant partners, thank you for joining our back to school midweek moment. You can follow South Suburban on YouTube, there at SSNBC, or on Facebook at SSNB Church, or you can sign up for our updates at South Suburban mbchurch.org, or support us by paypal.me/ssnbc. Again, I'm Reverend Melanie. This is Keisha. Thank you so much for joining us. Y'all have a blessed week. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.